addressing different kinds of discriminations, centering the experiences of South Asian youth. Those who don't know about Maitri is around in the Bay Area for over 30 years, providing support to survivors of domestic violence through culturally responsive, free, and confidential services. Maitri's vision is to create a society where all relationships are built on dignity, equity, and compassion. And to create that just society, we must address and eliminate all forms of discriminations. And to end all kinds of discriminations and achieve safety for all of us, we must come together, connect, and raise our collective voice. In that effort, we sent out an open invitation to youth communities to come and share their experiences of facing discriminations and any suggestions they might have in ending those discriminations that all of us have faced in some forms or other at different stages in our lives. We believe youth are the best leaders who can end harmful social and cultural conditions, and they have power to build a better society, a better future. We are happy that today we have 5 youth speakers who will be sharing their personal experiences, and we have a moderator who will be guiding the discussion. But I'm requesting all the event attendees to take part in this meaningful discussion during our Q&A session. Not only you ask questions, but also feel free to share your experiences of facing discriminations with all of us. Also, before we start our Q&A session, we will be posting a survey poll link on the screen. Please take that survey. It will take not even 1 minute, but it has immense value for us. Let's not wait any more time to start the discussion. I'm handing over the mic to our moderator, Twisha Anand. Twisha, stage is yours.
Thank you, Nandini. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this discussion, which is very relevant, very important, yet very difficult. And the topic today that we will be discussing will be the topic of discrimination due to race, religion, ethnicity. My name is Trisha Anand. I will be the panel moderator today. And I have been a volunteer with Maitri for the last 10 years. I feel really privileged to be a part of an organization that is doing such an important work for our society. In my professional life, I have built digital mental health platforms over the last decade, working closely with teens and young adults. Currently, I'm the co-founder of Humanest, where we are building a clinically rigorous mental health platform that scales, but with the power of community. I'm myself an immigrant from India and have lived through the experience of discrimination, and I have myself experienced the moments of doubt and discomfort. The topic is sensitive and needs a candid disclosure. So we need people who are real, authentic, who bring their true selves to the table, who are not scared to talk about important issues, delicate issues. And those are my favorite kind of people, my teens and young adults, the Gen Z. So today we have 5 panelists with us from this amazing, authentic Gen Z population who are from the South Asian descent, but are here with us living in the US. So we will start with introductions to all these 5 panelists, after which each of them will share their experiences with all of you. We'll open up the forum after that for question and answers. And like Nandini said, I will prompt you for a survey link that you can fill just a few seconds. So without much ado, I would start with the intro for our panelists. As I introduce them, they're going to turn on their video so you know who's who. So we'll first start with Adarsh Gupta. Hi, Adarsh. Adarsh is a junior at St. Francis High School in Mountain View, California. He's the founder of Fit for Grit Academy and co-founder of Guidey Project and Sidekick app. He's an avid martial artist, speaker, golfer, and dancer. Thank you, Adarsh, for being here. Next, we have Ryan Thalukter. Ryan, can you turn on your video? Hi. Ryan is a junior at Granada Islamic High School. Ryan is a Muslim Bangladeshi American from the Bay Area. He likes to play basketball in his free time and is involved with many activities through his school. Student Body Council President, high school basketball captain, model, UN head delegate, and many more. Next, we have Amber Mishra. Hi, Amber. Amber is currently a third-year undergrad student at UC Davis, majoring in statistics and minoring in computer science and political science. Outside of his coursework, he serves as an ASUCD senator and embarks on mental health projects with different organizations. Next on our panel, we have Anjali Nugeli. Hi, Anjali. Anjali is a high school senior committed to playing women's soccer at Pomona College, where she'll be majoring in computer science. Aside from playing competitive soccer, she's the editor-in-chief of her high school's newspaper publication, the Saratoga Falcon. She also co-founded the SHS Fitness Club at her school, which serves to educate students on how to pursue a healthier lifestyle through exercise and nutrition. She volunteered her skills for Maitri's outreach and prevention program. And last but not the least, we have Nehal Almamoon. Nehal? Yeah, here he is. Hi. Nehal is currently a second-year undergraduate student at UC Berkeley studying bioengineering. Nehal was born and raised in Newark, California, and has been an active member in the Bangladeshi American community in the Bay Area. Welcome all. Thank you for giving us your time, and we can't wait to hear from you. So I will start the panel by inviting Adarsh to share his experiences with us.
Thank you. In a racist society, it's not enough to be non-racist. We must be anti-racist. These true words were spoken by Angela Davis, an American political activist, scholar, and author, who exemplifies the way that many of us should, yet don't live our lives. This strong statement of a few words can drive deep emotions, altering the way that many look at their actions and the impact they have on society. But what if I told you that Angela Davis is not only an activist, scholar, and author, but she's also a longtime member of the Committee of Correspondence for Democracy and Socialism, or what others like to call it, the Communist Party. In her time as a communist activist across Asia and the US, Angela Davis has helped form the Communist Party after the fall of the Soviet Union and provided guns for a deadly takeover of Marin County Courthouse. Knowing this, does it change how you perceive her anti-racist message? Does her being a communist completely negate her words? Probably not, just as her being a strong-hearted feminist doesn't make her words law. I bring up Ms. Davis' example to illustrate how half stories can be twisted to fit the narrative of the author, and the same information can be seen differently depending on the light that's shining on it. The truth behind the scenes is always more complicated than we realize. Unless we dig deeper, read up on events, and analyze it for ourselves, the whole truth will not surface. Similarly, if we always judge people by who they are or what they have done in the past, their important message may be lost. Today, I would like to share with you my interpretation of racial discrimination and see how we can analyze the full story behind the scenes. I'll begin by analyzing the current violence and discrimination faced by African Americans, Asian Americans, and Pacific Islanders, and then delve into a more personal topic about the effects that 9/11, an event that occurred 4 years before I was born, has on me as a male person of color. We'll go behind the scenes to gather facts and data so we can draw our own conclusion. In closing, I hope to leave you with enough to ponder over and decide for yourself. History has repeatedly shown that media has accelerated political and monarchical propaganda, whether in communist China or democratic India. Media has been leveraged to mangle the truth, to push for a certain agenda. What we're told in the news and led to believe may not always be reality. Let's analyze the discrimination felt by African Americans in the United States. A paper by the University of Michigan stated that African Americans are, quote, far more likely than whites to be investigated and convicted of murder, leading to innocents being incarcerated for life because of their race. It's also discussed the high rate of Blacks being shot by cops. Now, this topic has been altered, adapted, and adjusted to be presented in a way that's beneficial for the author. From the Black Lives Matter movement, more attention has been brought to the faulty bias training programs within the police force, which have led to far too many cops drawing their weapons sooner due to the skin color of the perpetrator. But before we condemn this as the whole truth, let's look at more data. Based on numbers alone, in 2020, white civilians were shot and killed twice the amount of Black civilians, at a stunning number of 457 to 241, as cited by Statistica.com. If I was to only give you this data, you would not believe cops discriminate against Blacks. In fact, you would think the opposite. The point is that a quick Google search yields data on these important topics to help you put this topic on a weight scale and decide for yourself where the discrimination lies. Another group discriminated against and brought to the spotlight in 2021 are Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. The COVID-19 outbreak in Wuhan, China, led to considerable violence and the formation and amplification of the Stop AAPI hate movement, with several lives lost to supposed random gunmen and over 9,000 instances of anti-Asian hate crimes since 2020, according to NPR News. I felt personally threatened. I had heard of Asian discrimination in the workforce, in schools, and even in the immigration system, but I became fearful of my life seeing outright the violence towards fellow Asian Americans simply because of the hatred toward their type of skin and appearance. These random nature of shootings gave uncertainty to my own safety as I got a glimpse of those with targets on their backs may feel. A reduced feeling of self-worth flooded through me as I read news stories of Asian violence. Is one life worth more than someone else's simply because they came from a different place across the ocean or because they have a different skin color? This unjust behavior targeted towards Asian Americans has been occurring for a long time. And unless we highlight it, confront it, and battle it, history will keep repeating itself. 9/11 is an unfortunate example of the hate that changed the course of America. Hate towards freedom and democracy as thousands of lives were lost and impacted forever. The fallout of 9/11 left an unbelievable wake. Following the attack, a wave of Islamophobia spread throughout the country. The anger towards Muslims grew and became pure hatred and extended beyond Islam to all people of South Asian and Middle Eastern descent. Islamophobia was validated with, look what they did on 9/11. A few years ago, the bombings in the UK and US in churches and public areas created another mass hysteria towards people of color. The media was quick to spread fear to gain more clicks and views, but the impact of their words left scars on millions, including my extended family. I remember one night hearing my mom on a call with the rest of her family, who's predominantly Muslim, and they were discussing ways to not look suspicious in the airport following an incident with my grandfather, who was detained for 3 hours at the airport when he arrived from India without being given a single reason, and then without any explanation was dismissed. Not knowing what or who or when an act of discrimination can be showered on you leaves one in a very precarious situation. Fear of not knowing envelops you. When I heard my family's discussions, I became afraid. And again, I felt like I had a target on my back. After the incident with my grandfather, the feeling of danger and being discriminated against has been my companion when I travel. Because if these are random discriminations based on how I look, there's nothing I can do to change that. As I walk down the street or at the airport, I could be the victim of another random discrimination act. I feel the discrimination. Unless you're the one being discriminated against, it is hard to empathize. But we must try. We must take the time to read and learn current affairs and know what is going on in the world around us to understand the truth for ourselves. We're constantly learning, and with the advent of information at our fingertips, it can be a good or bad thing. The good thing is that data is available to draw our own conclusion. The bad thing is that too much data is available. The vast amount of facts and data thrown at us can get overwhelming, which is why many people end up only subscribing to one or two news channels, which leads to biases. It would take too much time for an independent investigation of the truth, and we depend on our trusted sources to tell us the truth and what we should believe in. Our choice of media creates our biases, and in the middle of a digitally available information world, we are still an ignorant society. A society where half a country can believe in something against all moral and logical stances due to the opinions presented by one man or one group. Proof of this is in the discrimination we saw Black and Asian Americans face, fueled by the media, and how I, a person of color, have been personally impacted by this false media representation and discriminatory biases. It would seem we have no way to fight discrimination. But hope is not lost. Discrimination and biases are not something that will just dissipate over time. We need to actively make people self-aware, embrace diversity, fight unconscious biases, and encourage self-education. The favorite line of every Asian parent: do your homework. Until we look past the agendas of the media and see the truth of the situations, racial discrimination will continue. Angela Davis's words are right. No matter if she's a communist, feminist, or award-winning author, we must be anti-racist and take proactive measures to end this hatred in our community. Open your mind, educate yourself, and analyze the news from sources you never thought to read before. Discrimination ends now. Thank you.
Thank you, Adarsh. Thank you for sharing your experiences as well as enriching us with some tips and ideas on how to become anti-racist. And in line with what you said, the thing that comes to my mind from your speech is that the word that stood out was impacted. How is the narrative of the adults, the media, how is it shaping our younger generation, the kids, the teenagers? What's going on? And on that note, I would love to hear from Ryan about his experiences. Growing up, I know Ryan has a younger sibling. What's going on? How is this impacting families, the kids and the teenagers in the families from whatever is going on? So Ryan, over to you.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm a Muslim American living in the Bay Area. And the earliest phases of religious discrimination I felt was in 2018, I believe, when me and my high school team went to San Francisco area to play a basketball game. And from the start, the other team started heckling at us saying like, we're brown, we're Muslim. They got news that we're Muslim way before the game even started. And they just kept going at us how like Muslims can't play basketball. This is like a white person sport. This is a black person sport. Why are Indians playing basketball? So from the beginning, it would just hurt us it just hurt us. And throughout the game, the referee sort of sided with them. And in my opinion, every call went for their favor. And at the end of the game, we lost. And as team captain, I went to go shake the referee's hand. And the referee right in front of my face talked to the other coach and said, these quote unquote, these brown boys cannot play basketball and they should go back to India. So like, I'm Bangladeshi, and for someone, this happens often, and they call me Indian. And it hurts me because India is a completely different country. Bangladesh is a completely different country. And to like combine the two that have different cultures, just because of the color of our skin, we both have brown people in our country, hurts a lot. So that's just one of the earliest phases I felt. Same year, 2018, that winter break, we were heading to Lake Tahoe, and There were no restaurants nearby. It was Christmas Eve. Everything was closed. So we had to go to a bar just to find some food for dinner. And my mom, once we ordered, my mom was being heckled at this clearly drunk guy. And he just kept going at it, calling my mom a terrorist. And at the time, terrorism all around the world was huge. And most of it was directed towards Muslims being terrorists, ISIS, all that stuff, right? And for me, hearing the word terrorist was okay, but calling my mom a terrorist, blaming my family for something we never did. My brother is 8 years old and he doesn't even know what the word means. And he's just seeing our mom being called a terrorist for no apparent reason. She's just sitting on a table. Luckily, my uncle stood up for my mom. We stood up for my mom. The owners of the bar stood up for my mom. We left that bar, but we left it with a sense that terrorism can be like, is very affiliated with Muslims nowadays, even though nobody did anything. It's just a group of people did something and now Muslims are being called terrorists. Same exact year. This is all before my high school life, but we went to DC with my class, and this one girl in our class, she was wearing a hijab. If you don't know what a hijab is, just a headscarf that Muslims wear, Muslim women wear. And someone almost tried to take it off from her head and saying that, what are you hiding behind it? Why are you wearing that? Is this a form of like terrorism once again? And all the boys in our class, all the girls in our class, all the teachers, we all stood up for her. And keep in mind, this was in DC, the capital of the USA, the capital of the land of the free. And we're being like religiously discriminated because some girl in our class was wearing a hijab and someone wants to take that off. Why? Because she could be a terrorist. She could be endangering this country. So overall, it's just no matter where you are in the world, no matter what city, if you're in a dominant Muslim country, discrimination is everywhere. It doesn't have to be because of your religion. It could be because of your gender. It could be because of the color of your skin. It could be even because of your age. Like, I feel like nowadays youth are very discriminated for like little reasons here and there. So discrimination is everywhere, and it's just depends on how do we just take it in? Do we not tell anybody, or do we stand up for ourselves? Do we let everybody know about what's going on in the world? Which is why I feel like this webinar is very important. And I thank all the people who joined, because like as youth, we all have faced discrimination of some sort, and it's important to speak up about it. So yeah, that's just some personal experiences I felt about how I was religiously discriminated. And thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. That was such a candid speech, and it came from your heart. So thank you for sharing with us and for the audience members. I'm sure when you were speaking, some of the Good Samaritans listening to you, their jaws must have dropped, like, really? That really happens? Or some people who thought that this happens to maybe one or two people in the country at some point. This is far more common than we can imagine. And that's where being anti-racist comes into play, rather than just being silent and thinking, oh, that's bad, or oh, that should not happen. No, we have to act. Thinking is great, but actions is what we really need here. And the other thing that you brought out, like, again, the phrase that stood out to me was the color of the skin, how that's just like so uniform, and people just confuse others by the way they look, by the color of their skin. And I would love to hear from Amber to share some experiences regarding discrimination, because I know you have something very important to say in terms of not just discrimination from others, but also from within the community, and what your experiences are. So Amber, over to you.
Hello, everyone. I'm here to present my personal anecdotes about racial discrimination from my childhood, high school, and college experiences. So I want to start off with my first anecdote when I was 8 years old, attending an elementary school in the city of Burlingame. My neighborhood had been a predominantly white neighborhood with a small number of Asian Americans. I was one of the few Indian kids who attended the school, and even though this had not been such a huge factor, there were still subtle hints of racism. Overall, I loved my experience at this school, as I lived in this community for 10 years. However, whenever I played games with my friends, Some of them referred to me as chocolate and my lighter skinned friends as white chocolate. This definitely would have been due to my brown skin complexion. Of course, at this time period, I did not consider that as an offensive statement at all. It did not register to me until years later, and I was a bit shocked that I had been referred to that term, and I realized this form of subtle racism that was still present in that community. It definitely made me feel a little bit self-conscious regarding my complexion, especially being one of the few Indian kids in my school. This form of racism also occurred to me when I was super young, which made me realize how certain students can be racist. And since we were young, the words were not truly impactful, but it skewed my perception of skin color from a very young age. Flash forwarding to the future into the year of 2010. This is when my family and I moved to Fremont, and I was shocked by the large Indian community present in my city. I had perfectly assimilated into the city and its culture, as my junior high school and my high school were predominantly Asian. Nearly all my family friends and classmates had been Indian, and we were living in a bubble. As I entered my high school years, I started to meet new people and I developed many friendships. Most of my friends had been of South Indian origin, which was completely awesome, but we still had some cultural differences. During one of my friends and I's conversation, my friend asked my family where I was from in India. I replied saying, I'm from North India. My family and I are from Uttar Pradesh. My friend's reaction was a bit surprising as he said, quote unquote, oh, I thought you were South Indian. You're a bit darker than a normal North Indian person. This comment deeply affected me as I was completely taken aback from that statement. I knew that I was a bit darker than a normal North Indian person, but hearing this statement from another person hurt me. It had shocked and frustrated me that there was still racism prevalent within my own community. And immediately after this incident, I reached out to my family to discuss the situation as I was deeply affected. My mother explained to me how I should never be ashamed of my skin color and that these perceptions of who looks North Indian is completely false. She explained to me how the mentality of skin color in India is heavily influenced by the media, Bollywood, and beauty culture in India. The concept of being light skinned has always been a sensitive topic within India. But throughout this process, my parents served as a positive influence in this perspective because they explained how throughout India, people have different skin tones. Being from North or South India does not play a role in your skin tone. And adopting this perspective boosted my confidence and self-esteem as I navigated myself through this bubble through the rest of my high school experience. My last anecdote comes from my experience in campaigning to be an ASU city senator at UC Davis. This had occurred last year during spring when I campaigned for a public office position within UC Davis. Campaigning gave me a lot of new experiences in understanding how my race played a role in how people perceived me. For instance, during campaigning, we had a section called the candidate debate, which occurred during elections week. This debate had not been widely attended by all students, but it was still reported by our student news outlets, so it had a significant amount of value and weightage. During this time period, our student body was more focused on the Israel and Palestine conflict, which had been on the peak due to the horrendous violence occurring at the West Bank, as well as other student body issues at the time. With a lot of these conflicts occurring, a group of activists discussed a progressive yet controversial legislation and how UC Davis should implement this legislation to change their own investment plans from certain corporations. As this issue gained momentum, I had a discussion with two other Senate hopefuls on the upcoming candidate debate. My fellow hopeful told me how we were discouraged from attending the debate as we would be asked controversial questions regarding specific international conflicts. Shocked at this response, I replied with, is it really due to our skin color? Just because we are brown, we are going to be most likely asked this question. And to this, my friend replied, unfortunately, yeah, we are at a greater risk to be asked this type of question. This interaction shocked me because I remember that if I had been white, this question would not have been asked at all. And I learned how the impact of my skin color has such a drastic effect, not even in national politics, but just college politics. I had no idea my skin tone plays such a huge role on how I can be perceived among everyone else. But this incident still gave me more motivation to make a direct impact amongst the school and make sure no other person of my skin color ever faces this type of discrimination at UC Davis. And after all of these anecdotes, I believe the best way that our community members can prevent this type of discrimination is through educating the youth. Educating children from a young age on the topic of racism and how to stand against it allows children to have a more open-minded perspective as they navigate through adulthood. I believe that racism is taught and not inherited, and making this change has to start within your inner circle and expand those teachings beyond those people. Changing these racist principles takes time and education to change one's mindset towards this topic, but I'm hopeful we can still do it. I want to thank Mrs. Ray for this opportunity and thank Maitri for hosting this event. This event truly empowers students like me to speak out against justice, and I'm hopeful for a brighter future. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. You talked about such an important point about teaching children early when they're young. I'm also very like your experience of being in college and having your college peers interact with you or give you feedback in a certain way because of the way you look was very eye-opening. Like here we have a college environment where students should be judged on merit and only merit, be it sports, be it academics, be it extracurriculars. They should just be judged on merit, but that's where the way you look comes into the picture, which is unfortunate. And how I think I'm going to just put this thought-provoking question into our audience's minds as to like how can we create a better environment where these young people are judged just on merit and nothing else. And on that note, I'm going to pass on the mic to Anjali, where she will share her experiences from her college and her background in sports with us. Anjali, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I will be talking about my experiences with racial discrimination. My relationship with my Indian identity has always been hard to explain. In elementary school, my brown skin was so buried into my subconsciousness that it never even crossed my naive mind that I didn't look like everyone else. I had the air of ignorant euphoria that only children are lucky enough to have, happily lost in my own train of thought. But the problem with oblivion is that the second you become aware of the truth, you can never go back. And this moment, the moment when my reflection in the mirror suddenly wasn't so gilded by innocence, was in first grade. I started up to my group of best friends during lunch, only for them to stare down at their hot lunches, picking at their meatloaf in silence. I noticed there was no room for me at the table, and when I asked why, all I received were fleeting glances, some sheepish, others rock hard. Then the queen bee rose up, looked me straight in the eyes, and told me that I wasn't welcome at her lunch table anymore because I was too dark. And repeating the story back almost 12 years later, I can still remember looking down at my trembling hands, seeing nothing but the melanin seeming to spread like a disease across my skin. After that day, all I wanted was to crawl out of my body. I fantasized about unzipping out of my current body and stepping out as the kind of girl that would be celebrated and accepted by my old friend group. Grappling with my race when I was younger left me confused, wondering why I felt so ashamed about something that was so out of my control. It wasn't until I began competitive soccer in middle school that I realized how internalized my battle with race had truly become. As I made my way through middle school, I began competitive soccer where I was one of the only Indian girls on the team. The treatment I got from the other girls started out covert. They would make jokes about me in an exaggerated Indian accent or ask me to solve convoluted math problems because wasn't I supposed to be the smart, nerdy one? But then the jokes weren't as subtle anymore, and laced behind every comment was a note of resentment, of standoffishness. During team trips, I would be left alone in the hotel room while my teammates quietly snuck out the door without me. During dinners, there was suddenly not enough room for me at the table, leaving me sitting at a booth with a couple other girls across the restaurant from my team. Soccer soon became more of a toll on me mentally than physically, as I brainstormed all the things I could do to finally be accepted on the team. More than anything, I tried to suppress my Indianness as much as possible when I laced up my cleats every day. I avoided the other Indian girl on my team and fake laughed when a teammate made a snide joke. I may not have been fully embraced by the girls, but I wasn't an outsider anymore, and that was more than I ever thought I was deserving of. At school, though, my experience couldn't have been more different, but difficult to grapple with in itself. Being raised by second-generation Indian parents, my Indian friends constantly berated me for being whitewashed, calling me a coconut when I didn't get their Bollywood references or inside jokes. Suddenly, the overwhelming confusion I felt that nightmarish day in first grade engulfed me once again. I was either too brown or not brown enough. No matter where I was or who I was with, I always felt out of place. My race never changed, but people's perception of it constantly was, and I was exhausted of having to switch across my various personalities to appease those around me. I was exhausted. That's the complicated thing about race and my relationship with it. I've been lucky enough to grow up in a supportive community with a loving family and have the opportunity to participate in club sports. I've been lucky enough to have never endured the horrific racism that is still rampant throughout our nation today. I have a lot of things to be grateful for. But individual experiences of race can be completely dictated by certain small moments that are a lot more defining than we'd like to admit. And for how quickly they happen, they're extremely difficult to unlearn. So how do you let go of these moments that ingrain themselves in your brain? Clearly, some are never forgotten. For me, it meant examining all these versions of myself I had created for others until I narrowed down exactly who I was and who I wanted to be. And that was the only version of myself that I showed people, regardless of who I was surrounded by. I also learned to focus on the tangible aspects of my life that I could control, like becoming the best soccer player I could be, regardless of where I fell in the social hierarchy of my team. On a broader scale, I hope that other Indian teens know that they're not alone in trying to discern what role their race plays in their identity and relationship with themselves and others. This is not an easy journey by any means, but it starts with seeing your worth based on attributes that other people can't define for you. Maybe you're an amazing athlete or musician or sister or friend. Maybe you're artistic and witty and book smart. Own the characteristics that you're proud of, and that confidence will extend to every aspect of your life. Even living in the Bay, it's easy to feel isolated as a person of color because everyone's experience is so entirely different. But that's the first step in fostering widespread racial equality and acceptance. Your story doesn't need to look a certain way or fit a certain mold to not only be valid, but celebrated. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anjali. You brought out another important aspect of the discrimination, which is identity issues. And this makes me think how many teens among us who are right at the cusp of adulthood at this point are confused about where they fit in. You use the word fit in. Where are they fitting in? How, like, what's their identity? What is right? What is wrong? Extreme confusion leading to alienation, and which of course is poor mental health. So are we shaping a mentally healthy generation with this kind of discourse, this kind of attitude? Obviously not. So now this makes me feel that my generation, the generation of millennials and the Gen X, it's on our shoulders also, and not purely on Gen Z, to actually make sure that we are creating those safe spaces, those discourses. And I'm a mother to a 3 and a 5-year-old. I teach my children right, because they will be you in a few years. And thank you for coming here and speaking out, so I know how to shape the right discourse, teach them right. And all the audience members here, if you have children at home, please teach them right, teach them early. On that note, I will pass on the mic to Nehal, who will share more about his experiences on this issue.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nehal. I'm a Bangladeshi American Muslim, and growing up had me in a little bit of an identity crisis. School always left me asking questions about myself. I'd wonder things like, what am I supposed to be? Am I supposed to be some kind of tech support, or am I a terrorist? Am I supposed to be super smart, or am I supposed to be smelly and gross, or both? Are these actually jokes, or are they just straight up racism? Even if they're all just jokes, are they okay to say? And why did I think it was okay to say? So many children experience like a really normalized racism in their school interactions. South Asian kids specifically currently have a weird standing in the social acceptable racism category. For the most part, racism nowadays is quickly called out and condemned. Racism, when it's directed towards South Asians, though, it's more often than not considered funny and weirdly acceptable. So much surrounding the nature of South Asians is considered laughable in modern Western society. People with Indian accents often find their accents laughed at and mocked. Indians are stereotyped to be dirty and smelly, and their portrayal in Hollywood doesn't help either. You have these characters that have really thick accents and they always end up being comic relief, but no one's laughing with them. Everyone's laughing at them. And in school, South Asian kids will often find themselves being ashamed of our heritage. Even things as simple as eating ethnic food was way too embarrassing to do. I remember waking up every morning, or my mom would wake up every morning, hours before her long workday, just to make me a meal and then pack it for me to eat, only for me to go to school and then be embarrassed to eat it. I'd go like hide in a corner, open up my thermos and like eat it quietly, make sure no one sees it. I dreaded the thought of people wondering what kind of curry I was eating today. Why did I have to eat my flavorful food out of a thermos instead of the dry food like everyone else? And the only thing worse than explaining what in the world I was eating was where in the world I'm from. Conversations would be like, are you Indian? No, my parents are from Bangladesh. Where? Well, it's like a small country. It's surrounded on all sides by India. So, India? I mean, I guess. Namaste, everyone. I'm Indian now. Being of South Asian descent, more often than not, has a person being just kind of referred to as Indian. It's easier, right? Like Nepal, Bangladesh. No, it's all India. You don't have to worry about it. And then as a result, Indian stereotypes are pushed onto people no matter if they're from India or not. So we'll hear things like, computer's not working, ask the Indian boy, he's tech support, right? And then the assumption that South Asians are generally smarter or more tech-oriented ends up being a lot more detrimental than it is beneficial. Not everyone conforms to these stereotypes. A stereotype is a generalization. It's not a universal truth. When South Asian children struggle in school, they often find themselves being made fun of for not being Indian enough. Or if they choose a career path that isn't the basic lawyer, doctor, engineer, they're the weakling. And these stereotypes aren't exclusively expressed by non-people of color. Oddly enough, the majority of the racism I've witnessed towards South Asians has been by South Asians. Why is that? It's because it's normalized. And it's funny, weirdly. South Asian children often find themselves being so ashamed of their heritage that they'll enjoy making fun of their race. They'll force thick Indian accents because it's funny to others. They'll make harmful, stereotypical, and self-deprecating jokes because the race feels like a joke to them. We know that we can condemn forms of racism. We've proven that we can recognize harmful and racist statements and call them out. But it's so rare when the race in question is South Asia. It's far too normalized. We need to treat South Asian targeted racism as just as bad as any other racism. If you hear anything remotely racist, say something. It shouldn't be okay to be racist to anyone. And it shouldn't be okay to feel like you were born into a race for comic relief. Don't let anyone put themselves down because of their race. Everyone should be allowed to be proud of their race. Only then can South Asian children grow up without feeling like they aren't allowed to be proud of who they are. And if you're a South Asian kid who feels like you lost the genetic lottery, just keep a few things in mind. Your race doesn't define you. Forget the stereotypes. Be whoever you want to be. But most importantly, remember, your packed lunch tastes way better than everyone else's. Thank you, Maitri, for having me, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you, Nehal. I'm hungry now. I'm craving me some parathas. So thank you. But no, you brought out something very important. The word is normalized. If it is normalized, does it mean it's okay? Is it the status quo? Is that what we are looking at in the future? yes, it's like I always say that discrimination based on race is not a black or a white issue. In many ways, there are so many gray areas, there are shades. And for our audience members who are here, who've been listening to these young people here, there are so many things, so many little nuances in what they shared today, in what these 5 young people shared today. For those who are the age of our panelists, their speeches, I hope, can make you realize that you're not alone. Like Anjali said, you're not alone. This is being experienced by a lot of teens and young adults like you. For those who are older, please teach your children better. You have children, if you have children at home. Like Amber mentioned, teach your children better. Make them aware, not blind, but actually anti-racist. And for those who do not have children and are still older, please make sure to be anti-racist. Others mentioned, be anti-racist. Stand up for when you see something, say something. Don't just think about it, just say it. And that is when we can truly shape a society that goes from point A to point Z seamlessly, where everyone is at the same plane. Miscommunication is a big evil, or uneven communication. This is when we can all be at the same plane. Because there has been so much sharing, I am going to offer the audience a few seconds in which I would invite you to participate in a survey. It will just take a few seconds. Your voices are important. We heard 5 powerful voices today, but it is the audience that now the baton has been passed to the audience. You learned, you heard, please take a few moments to absorb it, and please make your voices heard. Please answer these quick questions, and then we'll move on to the Q&A section. You should be able to see the survey online. This is both for our audiences on Zoom as well as on Facebook Live. I'm going to just take 2 deep breaths, and then we will move on to the Q&A. All right. We'll now open up the floor for Q&A session with our panelists. A few housekeeping tech things for the people on Zoom. You can either use the raise hand feature or type your question in the chat box. Same with Facebook Live. You can type your question on in the chat box. And if you don't have questions, but these speeches have really evoked some thoughts, some emotions, some anecdotes in your mind, you're welcome to share those with us as well. So I'll open up the forum now, and we'll take questions on chat as they come. All right, so here we have, okay, so the first question we have here is, it says, when any of these discriminatory incidents happen with you, how did you respond personally? And I'll open up, any one of the 5 panelists is welcome to answer at this time. You can just raise your hand and I'll invite you to answer. Adarsh, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. So I think one event that I really felt was when people kind of look over the fact that there's discrimination. And I've felt this before, where people of other races don't realize that I feel left out of a group, or that I feel this discrimination. So it's almost shocked. I am set back. Like I remember speaking to one of my other friends who was watching this event also happen. And he was also wondering like, why did they say that? Why did they feel like this when we all saw this happen? And then we both came to the realization that they just didn't understand that there are other viewpoints on this topic and that our ideas were not represented in only what they were saying. And it kind of just really made me step back one more time, where I really thought that we were all in this together, but then I realized, are we not anymore? And really, so it took me a second to recoil and get back in after that.
Thank you, Adarsh. Does anyone else on the panel have anything to share on this? Amber, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think whenever these incidents have occurred, I always remember to have a calm and collected approach to it, because when it's hard to not be aggressive, like as your gut instinct, but just maintaining your semblance and dealing with the situation with a cool head, like helps a lot in my experiences. So I think when incidents like this occur, I think being calm and collected is the best approach to take.
Thank you, Amber. Yeah, not avoiding escalation. I see is the way to go. Thank you, Anjali.
Yeah, when I would experience these incidents, especially in athletics, I think the biggest thing I noticed was the toll it took on my self-confidence on and off the field. You know, I'd walk into practice not feeling like my best self because I'd heard the comments from the other girls. So I think that the way that I mitigated this and I overcame it is by constantly reminding myself of my self-worth and seeing my value for something more than how other people perceived me. So I think that stepping away from that and really taking the time to define myself and feel pride in like who I was the way that I got through these incidents and didn't let it take so much of a toll on me, because it got to the point where it was just so tiring that I had to step back and really realize and put these comments into perspective and remember like where my value lay.
Thank you, Anjali. All right, we'll move on to the next question. How do you talk to a friend or a family member who may be discriminating against others? That's a good one. Nehal.
I think before addressing the question directly about like how to like solve that problem is to have everyone acknowledge that this is a problem, because most of the racism that I've like seen in general has been from like the brown community in my personal experience, and that I think we kind of give ourselves a pass, like just because we are a minority, that we can be racist against other minorities, especially with like older generations and like our families. And a lot of times we'll just like let it slide and we will ignore it, or we just like won't even acknowledge it. But some of the most racist remarks I've ever heard has been from the brown community, which is the craziest thing. But so I think we definitely do need to acknowledge that. But then to address it, especially if your parents make any racist comments, especially towards like complexion, because it is very normal, especially with South Asian Indian parents, to get on you about like how dark your skin is, or that type of thing, or like, oh, you're going out in the sun too much, you need to stay lighter, that type of thing. And kind of just like this anti-Blackness that tends to be super prevalent within the brown community. In order to address it, you just need to take them, sit down, and like try and talk to them about it. And if you don't like take that charge and start talking to them about it, they're never going to learn. Like if you just tell them, oh, that's wrong, that's not going to do anything. They're just going to like keep doing that just because that's how they grew up. And it's not their fault. Like that's how they grew up. That's like, those are the stereotypes that they grew up with. That's what's normal to them. And you need to show them that like that normal isn't the new normal, and it should never have been normal. And only once you've talked to them like one-on-one will they like kind of start to understand.
Thank you, Nehal. Anyone else has anything to say? All right. We'll then move on. Oh, before that, just a reminder for our Zoom audiences, you're very welcome to unmute yourselves and ask a question or share your experiences right here. So you have the unmute button at the bottom of the panel. So you're welcome to do that as well. In the meantime, I'm going to move on to the next question. Do you think that half of the times if you speak up and educate others is better than keeping quiet? Adarsh, go ahead, please.
I think that whenever you get the opportunity, it's always important to educate others. I know for myself that I can confess that I have made remarks which I am not proud of making. And luckily, I have had friends who've stepped in and corrected me, and then I corrected my ways. Now, that's something that took me time to admit, but it only happened because people were there to fix me. And unless we are there to help others fix their own actions, then this is going to be a never-ending cycle of racism, discrimination, and all these other biases in our community. So I think it's really our job to carry it on and push it forward to make sure it ends now.
I always say that Gen Z is the one who's going to fix all evils in our society. So it looks like my thoughts are on the right track. Great. Anybody else has any inputs on this? Okay. We'll move on to the next one. Sometimes people are racist without realizing. Is there any way to educate people about the line between being racist and being harmlessly funny? Nehal, would you want to take this because you spoke a little bit about it?
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely have seen a lot of comedy involved with race, and I've seen a lot that draws the line or like crosses the line and really like pushes it and gets to the point that is provocative. And I've seen that tackle race like really well, and everyone's able to laugh and have fun about it. And I think it's a really sensitive topic because people can be bothered by things that a lot of other people won't be bothered by. And there's no black and white to it. There's no like clean cut solution. You have to do something like this, or you have to say something a certain way, and this will please everyone or this will displease everyone. There's a lot of gray area to it. So I think the key is to just make it clear what your intentions are in making that statement, either in your demeanor or just saying outright that I don't mean this to be offensive. Or but if you feel like a lot more often than not, if you feel like a joke you're about to make might offend some people, just don't make it. Like they're risky jokes for a reason, right? Like comedians they'll come up with jokes about race, but they'll like calculate it carefully and they'll take it as a risk, right? They're like, this joke's either going to land or it's going to fail and it's going to be really bad for my career. So there's no clean cut solution to it, in my opinion, but always just make it clear that you aren't trying to hurt anyone's feelings.
Thank you, Nehal. Anyone else wants to say something about this? Like, yes, Ryan, please go ahead.
I feel like especially in my friend group in my school in general, we have like a lot of these jokes that like we feel like it's just between us and no one's gonna really like spread the tea, right? But when you joke around about like sensitive topics, some people in that friend group could be hurt, even though it's not about them. So I feel like not just like racism jokes, like discrimination jokes in general, before you talk, if you're gonna say something that has any negative impact or can have a negative impact on someone, I feel like we should just watch before we talk. That's like the only way. And if someone in your friend group or someone you know or like a family member it were to say something like that, I feel like correcting them in a nice way, because a lot of times in my family, if I were to correct someone in my family, they would take that as an insult. Like, who are you to tell me what to do? Who, you are younger than me. I know more than you. I've been in this world longer than you. But I feel like you have to approach them in a nice way, making sure they won't take it as an insult. Rather, they'll take it as how to educate on this topic. And yeah.
Thank you for bringing out this important point. You know, I'm right because I'm older. That is another nuance that we South Asians navigate very often. So thank you for pointing in that direction, pointing us in that direction. Others.
Tusha, do you mind if I actually phrase another question out for the group?
Absolutely.
So I remember Nehal bringing this up in his speech, but in Bollywood movies and such, we always see the light Indian hero be like the main protagonist, while we see these dark Indians or dark people being these villains and evil people who are always battling. So this is a very strong discrimination we see in movies and such. So how do you feel that we can battle this on? Because now we're moving past what we can directly impact. So how do we take this on to a bigger level?
Anyone would like to take that? The role of the media, I think, is very, very important in shaping the discourse. Absolutely. Amber.
I'll be honest, it's difficult because you have to start off small, then you go to the top to tackle it in that institutional level. I know it's educating. I know that like last year, like a couple of Bollywood songs have been canceled because they were references to skin complexion and whatnot. So there is awareness, and the music industry in Bollywood is understanding it in some way that, okay, like people are realizing that skin complexion isn't everything. But I think it starts with just education. That's like the best starting point to go off of, in my opinion.
Thank you, Amber. Since this pertains to the media, I'm sure everybody in the audience has consumed some form of South Asian media. Would anybody from the audience like to contribute to this question? You're very welcome to unmute yourself and speak up. You don't need to turn on your video if you wouldn't want to. That's totally fine. Any takers in the audience? Not yet. You're also welcome to type a text response if that's more comfortable for our audience as well as the Facebook Live audiences. We would love to hear from you. Media is very, very important in shaping the society, especially in the South Asian context. So anything you have to say will be incredibly valuable to the discussion here. Anybody from our panelists would like to answer this question? Anyone else has any opinions? Anjali, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think this can really tie to any sort of media, like whether that's Bollywood or even Hollywood in general. I think that media tends to portray really solidified ideas of beauty standards. And I think that this is really harmful for impressionable youth because it gets in their head and makes them think that looking a certain way is the only right option. And I think especially with apps like TikTok, where there's so much information being thrown at you in such a short period of time, we can either use apps like that to constantly perpetuate this unrealistic beauty standard that doesn't apply to everyone, or we can use these kind of apps as a way to spread acceptance for any sort of skin color or size or gender or anything. So I think that along with education, we have to use the resources we have right now to spread the positive and spread the good and deconstruct these really dangerous beauty standards rather than, keep cementing them over and over and ingraining it in really impressionable youth's heads. Because I feel like as someone who's been on the side of that, seeing so much information that is really honestly negative to mental health, I think we need to just be more conscious about the information that we're feeding people through social media and making sure that it's beneficial to youth's mental health and their outlook on themselves.
Thank you, Anjali. I would just add on, I want to tack on a question to Adarsh's question, which is, and this is for you panelists, which is the portrayal of South Asians in the Hollywood media. What kind of, do you think that aids to any sort of discrimination or any sort of unfairness or stereotyping to the way South Asian characters are portrayed in the movies and the TV serials here in the US? Anjali, please go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that it's definitely gotten better. Like, I guess the first show that comes to my mind is Never Have I Ever. And I think that what I really enjoyed about that show is that the protagonist is a South Asian woman, but the entire show doesn't revolve around her Indianness and like that being like the defining plot point of the show. Because I think that in the media in the past, when you saw a South Asian character in a show, like their personality trait was being like, I think someone mentioned in their speech, like the funny, like comic relief. Whereas in Never Have I Ever, she's just a teenage girl trying to navigate her life. And the central focus isn't her race, but instead it's her being, you know, trying to navigate academics and her love life. And there's just more to it. And I think that providing such like a robust perspective on a South Asian protagonist like is very beneficial in moving the conversation forward and letting South Asians in the media be seen as more than just brown, but like a person with like many layers to them, which is, I think we're moving in the right direction, but obviously it still has a lot of room to improve.
Thank you. I love that TV show as well. Adarsh.
I think that media representation definitely is a very wide range. So, I mean, it really depends on where you're coming from. If you're looking at media representation directly from India, it looks very different than if you're looking at just from the Bay Area and even from the East Coast. So I think it's really this wide range that we're all taking in. I know that at least the Bay has a very strong sense of change and wanting change, which is why we may have a very skewed sense of already seeing this change that we want to see in our media, while people on other parts of this country or other parts of this world are still facing discrimination that we thought was gone 20 years ago. And I know one thing for sure is that when I look in my TV shows, I don't see people who look like me. And I have pointed this out to my parents. I pointed this out to my sister, and I'm looking around, and every time I see it, it's this little side character who's on the computer, is like hacking into some database, something which is something I am not into. I'm not good at technology. I am not a tech person, and it's completely opposite of who I am. And so I'm looking at this South Asian character, and it's not like looking in a mirror at all. It's almost like looking at someone from a different planet altogether. And now I'm left with this weird feeling inside of me. It's like, does the world not actually see me? Am I just this other person that they don't accept anymore, even though media is being created by people of all races, of all genders, of everything, yet I am not being put out for others to see anymore? So I really think it's just all these questions always come to my mind every time I look at the media, and we just have to keep looking and pushing for change everywhere around the world.
And this resonates with me so much because so the new production of Aladdin on Broadway, both Aladdin and Jasmine are of South Asian descent, and which has never happened before. And when I showed the trailer to my 5-year-old, he was like, Indian people go on stage? Like, that was such a nice thing that they could actually see, and they could imagine that that's a possibility. And he's very interested in music, and I make sure to keep showing him that. So just so he knows that, yes, that does happen in real world. All right. Oh, we have some great comments from our audience members here on chat. I'm just going to read them aloud. Rishabh Ray says, yes, Indian girls have to be good at dancing, in quotes. Indian boys wear turbans and red spots on their heads, in quotes. It is very disrespectful, which is like the stereotypical portrayal of the Indian male and female. And Jayashree on chat has shared a link which says, she says, this is a very powerful write-up by Sonam Kapoor. And there is a link here if someone is interested in reading. All right. I again want to point the mic to the audience members. If anybody has any question, or if anybody wants to unmute and share something.
My name is Husseina, and I'm actually Adarsh's aunt. And I wanted to say that, yes, everything is very racist, in the sense I was thinking of the nursery rhyme, chubby cheeks, rosy lips, you know, that kind of stuff, talking about the fair skin, and always the Indian bahu's got to be gori and things like that. So I'm so happy that this discussion is taking place. And I've really enjoyed all the comments and all the things that have been said about the media, about Bollywood, all of that. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your valuable time with us. Jayashree, I see your hand raised here.
Yeah, so I think this is really good. I'm very proud of all these kids who are bringing up this issue. I think they are the next generation, and if they are the ones who will speak up, I'm a big believer of speaking up, even if it makes enemies. You need to speak up your thoughts, and if your thoughts are wrong or are not aligned, people will help you and they tell you, hey, you're thinking this is not right. So I think the more we speak up and correct people, or like at least tell them that, hey, I don't think this is wrong, I don't think this is right what you spoke. And sometimes people are not aware of what they made comment was offensive. So I think this younger generation with such powerful ideas and values is going to really change the next few years for us.
Thank you, Jayashree. Anybody else would like to say something? And with this panel and these contributions, I like on behalf of the audience and the panel and the older folks present here, I would say to the Gen Z and to the panelists that you're not alone. This is not your solo fight. This is not the fight of just your generation. We are all in this together. And these are not hollow words. These are not cliched words. We truly are, because for each one of you, there are at least 100 of us older folks who are standing with you in this anti-racist pursuit. We have another comment from Jayashree. Good job, kids. You were so awesome. Go change the world. We are with you. Thank you. We have one more question coming here. This question is actually, first I'll read the question verbatim. This question says, is there anything organizations like Maitri can help you in addressing this situation, can help you to address this situation? Now, the way I would frame it here, and I know there are various stakeholders, this is the perfect forum to ask this question because we have the youth, we have the volunteers like me, we have people in the audience, and we have the staff from Maitri itself. So we can just go round robin from each of the stakeholders because it'd be very interesting to hear everyone's perspective. So first to the panel, what would you expect from an organization like Maitri to help you address this situation? Nehal.
Well, for starters, I think organizations should offer some kind of counseling for people who feel like they aren't sure how to address discrimination in a sense, or if they have any trauma from experiencing it, how to deal with it. So definitely A3 being addressing mental health is very important, because I don't see a lot of organizations, especially for South Asians, that address mental health, because in my experience, mental health is super taboo to talk about within the South Asian community. A lot of people be like, oh yeah, therapy is like a white people thing. It's not really like for us. So it's really important that brown people get their therapy too, or at least address their problems and know that like you don't just have to deal with it.
Thank you, Nehal. I would say don't get me started when you say mental health. But no, absolutely. It's not only there's so much stigma in our society when it comes to mental health, we also need to make sure that even the providers or support givers are also culturally sensitive, culturally diverse, because even within South Asia, like many of you pointed out, there are so many little pockets, so many diversities, so many cultural contexts that it's also the matching of support that comes into play here, which South Asian agencies can do wonderfully, I'm sure. Anybody else from our panel would like to take this question? All right, I am going to put the microphone to Nandini because the question is, how can Maitri help addressing this situation? And I see Zakia here too. Any one of you would like to answer?
Yeah, first of all, we are recognizing that there is so many things we have to do, we must do to in raising awareness about this so many injustices around us. For example, we are primarily an organization that serve to help survivors of domestic violence, but there are so many issues that interconnected, and that we cannot ignore. And yes, we are here to help survivors of domestic violence, but at the same time, why why do you think that domestic violence is happening in the first place? There are so many things like gender inequalities and power imbalances in relationships. That small things. I mean, it's not small things, big things, but in a small things in a big bucket, or big things in a big bucket, adding up to make survivors' lives, especially women's lives, in danger. And if we don't address those inequalities, power imbalances, and if we don't try to fix it, or at least address it, at least we don't recognize that is happening around us, then we won't be able to bring any solution. So we are trying our best to be part of the solution. Like, for example, our platforms like panels, discussion, we bring community members, whether they're adult community members or youth community members, we bring them and we ask them, what are the topics you feel that we should talk about? We should uh, increase awareness about. We should engage community members so that all of us can, discuss and try to find solution. It is not anyone's, the domestic violence, partner violence, or racism, whatever it is not someone's personal problem. It is a community problem. It is a societal problem. And if we all don't, uh, you know, uh, work in collectively, we don't come together. As I said in the beginning, we have to come together, and we have to connect with each other, and we have to do something. We have to raise our voice collectively. Otherwise, we won't be able to solve the problem. So Maitri is trying its best to give that platform to all community members so that they can share their pain. They can help each other to find solutions. And not only that, I don't know how many of you have heard about Maitri podcast. I really request all of you to listen to that podcast. It's called Maitri, Between Friends, Conversations with Maitri. And if you listen to that podcast, every episode we focus on a specific issue that is directly or indirectly instigating power imbalance, gender inequalities, and directly or indirectly creating family conflicts or partner abuse and violence. So we are trying our best to show that so many things are interconnected. So many things are related to create that injustice in around us. So Maitri is trying our best, trying its best. We are trying our best to engage community, to educate community, and to find solution for prevention with community. Thank you.
Thank you, Nandini. I think power imbalance is the key, is the phrase here, right? That's what Maitri is fighting, be it domestic violence, be it race-based, gender-based, any sort of imbalance. Equality is what we are all striving for here, equal respect.
And everything
And
is connected. I mean, everything is
absolutely,
connected.
it is all interconnected. Absolutely. We have some more comments from the audience members. I'm going to read them out here. Tabassum says, I agree, it is the new generation which will bring about this change. And Maitri, to continue bring awareness to this very important topic. So thank you, Maitri. And well said, Nandini, these topics are interrelated and it is a community problem. Grateful to Maitri and all the organizers who take the time to build awareness and be a part of the solution. Absolutely. I will just say one line from the volunteers' perspective. I'm one of the volunteer. I've been with Maitri for about 10 years now. And the thing that brings me here, the thing that keeps me motivated is really this fight for equality, equal respect. We are all humans after all. And any kind of things like the color of our skin, the way we look, the way we are, that is beyond our control, and any kind of inequality based on that is unjustified, is totally unjustified. And that's what keeps us fueled, that we are fighting towards a better world for our next generation and for our children. With that said, any other comments from anyone else here, from our Facebook Live audiences? I must say the podcast is one of my favorites. When you're driving to work, just plug it on, listen to it. You really don't need to give it like a ton of your extra time. It's amazing the kind of awareness that the podcast is creating. I have been with Maitri for 10 years and I didn't know many, many things that I heard on the podcast here. All right. Any other parting comments, thoughts? Otherwise, I think we are almost at the end of our panel. The name of the podcast, Fatima, is Maitri Between Friends. It's available on Spotify and other major streaming services. Maitri Between Friends. All right. So I think we are ready to close our panel now. Tabassum says, thank you, Trisha, and all our youth speakers. You all are amazing leaders of change. Everyone. Ritika says, thank you for informative session. Panelists were great. I totally agree. So on behalf of Maitri Bay Area staff, board, and volunteers, I would like to thank everyone for sharing their experiences so candidly, bravely. Thanks to our lovely audience members, both on Zoom as well as Facebook Live, for showing up, participating, and really showing our youth that they are not alone. And big changes need big efforts. We can collectively really change the society for the better. And you can join Maitri's efforts. Maitri is doing an amazing job. You can join Maitri Bay Area in its efforts by liking and following the social media pages. If you would like to be, we would love for you to be a part of such panel discussions in future as well. Maitri is raising a lot of awareness with the wonderful work. So please like and follow the Maitri Bay Area social media pages. We are on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever you have an account, please like and follow. Maitri will be posting more details of future upcoming events from time to time. So please make sure to come back in, attend, tell your friends about it. Each one can actually raise so much more awareness. If each one of us, even if we share one, it's reaching 100 people easily. So please continue sharing, please continue raising awareness. And once again, I would like to thank everyone for joining us, and special thanks to all our 5 panelists for showing up, being brave, and totally showing the world what Gen Z is about and keeping us hopeful. So thanks, everyone.